This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Respectonomics brings you Living Economics, and this is a weekly production bringing you to date on what you might call local economic conditions. My name is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I am your voice of Respectonomics. I'm your year of Respectonomics, and appreciate you doing two things. One is the fact that you're listening, and I want to say thank you. But also I'm asking you as the living year of Respectonomics that you will also respond to me with your comments, thoughts, and ideas. Particularly, we want to talk about the fact that we offer this service in person or remotely, if that's preferable. But the idea is that these are ideas that can be brought forward and shared with people on a more individual basis, like a corporate presentation, if you will. In the meantime, what we're going to be talking about today is let's not talk about economics. Now, you may say, didn't you just say we're going to be talking about economics? And you're saying the title is Let's Not Talk About Economics. And the reason for that strange title, almost a paradox or contradiction, is because most people really don't want to talk about economics. It's a word, when you even hear it, you say, where's my night owl? I think I can fall asleep. And then the other part to it, of course, is that we look at economics as is often being called the dismal science. And it's very remarkable that economics has a brilliant way of looking backwards and explaining everything and not doing a particularly good job of explaining the forward picture. With this in mind, I want to tell you a story that happened very recently when I said to an individual, I'm going to be talking about economics, and what part do you want me to talk about? And the individual looked at me and said, I don't really know. I don't really care. I don't want to think about it. As a matter of fact, I don't think about it. And that was a very insightful comment because most of us do not think about economics. Now, we may do so if we're sitting in the lecture hall at university or at high schools, but wherever we may be, the very subject of economics isn't one that suddenly says, oh, I really want to be clued in on that one. And I want to talk about it today and share with you some thoughts from Respectonomics, because Respectonomics is a breed or a subtext of economics. The difference is most economics talks about how currencies move around and how transactions take place. Respectonomics works with a different currency. The currency is dignity, which translates into respect and the faith in the human being. Let's stick with economics, though, in the more financial sense, and recognize that most people really do not want to think about it. And having said they don't want to think about it, there are two or three thoughts that go with it. And the first one is, most of us today are in a world where we feel anxious, we feel frustrated, we feel distrustful, we feel that we're somehow being hoodwinked, and more than anything else, we are very aware of the rise in prices. Whether you're buying a piece of beef, whether you're filling your car up with gas, whether you're talking to your accountant, everything you touch these days brings about a higher price. And you hear yourself saying to yourself and saying to others, have you noticed the price of? And it can be anything. I know that there's a bag of potato chips that we used to buy. Now, maybe you say you shouldn't be eating potato chips. But in the meantime, the potato chips I think they were $2.99 a bag recently, and you could buy two of them for, I think it was for $5 or something. Then I saw one bag going for $5.99 this week. What I'm getting at is these higher prices are upon us, and we need to look at this and understand the frustration of inflation and how it is eroding our values, not only financially, but also eroding the very nature of the respect or the dignity within which we can hold leadership, financial leadership, governments, corporations, and the like. Let's take a look. We at the moment are looking at, this is June of 2026, and we are looking at some kind of arrangement between the United States and Iran. I think most of us will agree that it's closing in on a piece of paper that may not be worth the paper it's written on. That's an old, old story from way back when. But the truth of the matter is, it is unlikely that the nature of the truce, the nature of the peaceful arrangement will in fact have lasting foundational value. There are so many historical reasons for this, but maybe the most important one is if one thinks in terms of the level of enmity or animosity that's existed in so many parts of the world for maybe 2, 3, 4,000 years, it is unlikely that a piece of paper in June of 26 is going to solve it. But with that in mind, we also need to look at some very practical details. We know that the price of oil has had a significant influence on the price levels of everything we touch, because everything we touch has a degree of transportation attached to it. Transportation doesn't just mean it was in a truck, which costs more diesel. Transportation comes in many different forms. Transportation is transportation of energy itself, transportation of ideas, which is education, and the transportation of information and energy, and the whole conduit of how we get everything at our kitchen table or in our house. It's all got there somehow through a method or proposal of transportation. And when the base reason for transportation is rising, as in the price of oil, that affects the price of everything that we receive. Whether it's education, whether it's information, whatever it may be, it costs more to deliver, more to transport. Therefore, let's go back to baseline and think about how does this oil that's been stuck in the Straits of Hormuz get to the market? First of all, there's something like 1,000 ships that are involved in all of this, so that alone is going to take time. Inventories have been depleted. The strategic reserves have been cut by 50%. So you've got a whole issue of having to restore, to reflate the original inventories, the original systems. No different. You go into the store and you find out that they're out of a particular product. No, we don't have any corn left this week. And it can take a lot of time to get the corn from the fields back into the trucks, into the store. These things do not happen magically, and oil is exactly the same. It's going to take time to get the oil back to the refineries. And some refineries haven't even started up. They've actually had to be closed down because of lack of supply. They do not come back immediately. It's like your store. It doesn't just open immediately because you want the corn. There's a lot of things that have to happen in the background, how things have to be taken from the back room and restocked and so on. A refinery is exactly the same. It's going to have to be restocked and restarted. So with that in mind, the whole issue of bringing the oil back to where it was is going to be difficult. We know that the peaceful agreement is probably lacking in the essence of peace itself, and therefore we cannot look at a sustainable, reliable, secure oil supply in the foreseeable future. Now, with that in mind, we've got two other things going on. We have got the stock market appearing to do very well, and most of us are saying, well, everything seems to be okay. And there's a background story to this that has two parts to it that need to be recognized. And the first one is that the money supply, don't shudder when you hear the word money supply and think, what are you talking about? Money supply is what happens whenever credit is created. Anytime there's a loan, you increase the supply of money because that loan has produced money that effectively came from nowhere. Because the bank says, here it is, they credit your account with $1,000 or whatever you're borrowing, that is adding to the money supply. Multiply that up by many thousands, and you end up with government deficits. Government deficits are all to do with putting money into the system that really came from nowhere. And the nowhere is from the central banks. The central banks print the money. It's pretty much an A, B equals C equals D. So You've got this money supply. Don't shudder at the expression. Just understand that money has become more and more copious, more and more available, more and more accessible. And as money comes into the system, it contributes to two things. It increases the chances of inflation. We can see that, of course, in all walks of life, whether it's in oil or whatever commodity you're looking at, gold. But the supply of money will increase the price of things. And it is thought to be responsible to some extent for the increase in prices of common stocks, because common stocks represent ownership. And if the ownership is being inflated because of this money supply, it is an A equals B equals C that the price of the stock will rise correspondingly. We also have the issue that as the money supply grows, the money has to go somewhere. You know that old theory about water? Water will always have to go to its natural vantage point. It has to. That's what it does. And anybody who's got a leaky roof knows that the water comes into the house. And the water that we're talking about here is the money supply. The money supply has to go somewhere. And if it's not going into real estate, if it's not going into collectibles, if it's not going into whatever else you can think of, then there's a reasonable chance it's going to end up in stocks. So you can look at money supply and stocks in a similar context or a similar conjugation. With that in mind, the money supply will continue to grow so long as there's a continuing increase in the deficits by governments. Governments are in a deficit position. They are accelerating the deficits. They have become commonplace. They have become, the word is ubiquitous, meaning everywhere. You can use another word. They're peripatetic. They are walking around every government that you can think of. It seems like I can write the check and therefore I will do it. And that's what they're doing. And therefore, we've got this increase of supply of money. We've got a shaky truce going on, which call it a truce, call it whatever you will. And at the same time, we've got governments that are beholden to the idea of we can borrow the money and devil take the hindmost. Who knows who's going to pay it back in the years to come? We also have another thing going on, that when we talk about inflation and we talk about how prices are rising, we talk about prices rising in relation to what you might call fixed values. That's a pretty obvious statement. If the price of apples has gone up, the fixed entity is the apple, and the price of it has gone up, even though nothing has changed to the quality of the apple. But the price has gone up, and that's called inflation. And in the stock market, we are seeing inflated multiples. Now, that sounds like a heavy-duty expression. But a multiple is a way in which the stock price is expressed as in relation to the profitability of the company. If, for example, you had a company that was making $1 a year and its shares were trading at $10, you would say it's trading at 10 times earnings. That means 10 times 1 is 10. So with that in mind, you would then say, well, if it's earning $2, that particular company, and the stock is trading at $10, it's trading at 5 times earnings. So you can see the math. The math today has got those numbers so inflated when talking 30, 40, 50 times earnings. And in many cases, let's be brutally, academically, intellectually honest, you will find companies that are raising billions of dollars that don't actually have profits at all. It's not to say the businesses aren't brilliant. It's not to say that there aren't reasons to expect many, many profits in the future. But as you would know from forecasting the weather, it's sunny weather until it rains. It's beautiful weather until it snows and freezes. How often have we said, boy, I didn't expect that? Well, we should be always on the lookout for, boy, I didn't expect that. And as we expect other things or expect other things, we can take more of an approach, not only of being cautionary, but also one of paying attention. When that individual said to me, I don't think about economics, the leash that I pull is this. We need to be thinking about economics. We need to be aware of the damage and the benefits that come from great economic projects. But as we do this, we can then start recognizing the risks that we're encountering and that we do not want to be the ones that find ourselves lemming-like pouring over the edge of the precipice. I will conclude with one comment. If we find ourselves going into a recession isn't necessarily a bad thing because a recession means, it's another way of saying the economy, the life, prosperity is receding. It's not a bad thing to recede from the edge of the cliff. Let's pay attention. This is the Voice of Respectonomics. It's Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, and I rest my case.